What's going on, YouTubers? This is me, Johnny, here in Shela, Guatemala. I just got back from the capital yesterday. Anyhow, I just got back from the capital yesterday. I was in the capital for a couple days, getting my paperwork renewed and adjusted and up to date. I ended up spending probably $200, I think. I was a couple years late on some fees I owe here to the government of Guatemala. I think 2, maybe 3. I'm not sure what it is. That's one of the nice things about living here. When you owe the government of Guatemala money, you just pay it when you want to. It's more of a suggestion than something you have to do. But anyways, I got caught up on that. And because I have a new passport, my old one expired. I got to pay extra money to get that all readjusted. So as you can see, it's a little way for the government to earn income from people. Anyways, as came up to about $200, I'm up, well, more or less, I'm up to date on that. So that was interesting going to the capital. It's like there's no coronavirus in the capital. Everything, well, to me, everything seems normal. But I was shocked at how many tourists I saw. I tried out this new place. I stayed in Zone 4, and I was actually surprised by how many people were at the hotel. I think it was full mostly. It was kind of I don't want to say big, but it was a lot of people there. Probably 20 or 30 maybe. Maybe that's not a lot to you, but 20 or 30 people in a hotel seems like a lot to me. Anyways, it was a good experience because I met some new people, and there's still people traveling. This one young lady was on her way to Ecuador. She's on her way to Ecuador. And I met this older guy. I don't know where the hell he was going, but I chatted with him a little bit. And then there's quite a few Central Americans in there. So I met quite a few Central Americans. They were mostly from, I think, El Salvador. And they had some interesting stuff because they were in the capital more or less for a similar reason I was. They were trying to register a motorbike in the capital there, and they got a lot of bad information. And I just want to mention this. People think it's only gringos that get the runaround in the Guatemalan migration or whatever government office you're talking about. Now, they were told all kinds of information that was wrong. Like they were told they needed a DPI, which is a local ID here, to register a motorcycle. You don't need that. You don't need to be a citizen. You don't need to have any local ID. You just need to get your tax ID number. As far as I remember, you need to get your tax ID number, which is your NIT. And you just go down to the SAT office to issue a NIT. You buy whatever you buy, and then you go and register it. But for whatever reason, this young guy was getting all kinds of nonsense. Oh, you need a DPI. And then so he went and says, well, how do I get the DPI? So he went to immigration. And they said, you can't get a DPI. And he says, well, I need a DPI to register my bike. And then they told him, well, you don't need a DPI to register a motorcycle or a car. You just get your basically your tax ID number, and then you go from there. Anyways, I just want to point that out, how even when gringos think they're getting a lot of bad information, it's like everyone goes through this. I felt bad for the guy. I think he said he was in the capital for a couple months to get that worked out. I think it was there for other reasons, but he's getting the runaround for like a long, long time. So that was kind of messed up. Anyways, I got to meet some people. I met some people, got some information, and that's how that went. Anyways, going to immigration. I did not go to immigration personally. I did walk by the office, and it's true, they have like a long line where you essentially can wait in line for 4, 5, or 6 hours and get your thing taken care of. But then to pay for the whole thing, you got to go to another line, which means you got to come back the next day. So going to immigration can take 2 or 3 days. I'm saying business days. So you got to factor that in if you're going to do it yourself. Now, I recommend you get a lawyer. Other people don't, but the reason I recommend you get a lawyer is because like this young Salvadoran guy, he's getting all kinds of bad information. He thinks he's getting right information. He thinks because he speaks Spanish, he has an advantage, which is true. He does have an advantage because he speaks Spanish, but he just saved himself a lot of money by going there, he thought. And then it turns out if he would have just hired someone, it would have just been cheaper and he would have been done already. So even when you speak Spanish, there's still hurdles you got to cross. So when people say you have to speak Spanish to get an advantage, that's not true. It's knowing the right people. And Spanish does help, but it's knowing the right people so you don't get all the frickin' runaround. Anyways, I did walk by immigration, and I was like, I'm not going in there. I wasn't planning on it, but I was just like, wow, you literally have to stand outside in a line just to get inside the building. And I can't even imagine, like, if you can't speak Spanish, and you're having trouble and you have to go to various offices, then it's during the pandemic, and you got to wait in line for everywhere you go. It just would not be worth it to me. Anyways, the reason for this video is about some of the problems with offshore banking, or what I just came across. Now, this isn't a big deal. This is like a small thing, but it's a small thing that could get really big if you're from the United States. This could get really big. Well, there's more and more gringos on expat websites, or the Facebook websites, talking about how they have to fill out a W-9 for their offshore account, which isn't anything really new. Banks have been asking for this information. For those of you who are not from the United States, a W-9 is basically a form. It's a tax form where if you have an employer, they fill it out how much money they pay to you. That's what that is. It's different than a W-2. W-9 is more like if you're a business and you're paying another business. So what the banks do here locally is they fill out a W-9 where even though they're a bank, they say they're your employer. And whatever interest they pay to you, which ain't very much, that's your so-called income. And you're filling that out and you're signing it, amongst many other things. Now, that's kind of been the case for a while now. That's why if you do offshore banking in your own name, you have absolutely no privacy as a North American. I'd say that even as a European, but people will disagree. Depends what part of Europe you're from, I guess. But here's my point. The banks here locally are saying you have to fill that W-9 every two times a year, every 6 months. Now that's freaking crazy. So you fill this out once, and then you fill it out again. And if you do not fill it out, they automatically close out your account. Now, I don't know if they're going to keep the money, or if there's probably a process for you to get that money back. But if you don't do the process, they probably keep it, and that's probably partly why they're doing that. But this is all at the request of the United States government. Basically, this is the FACTA stuff. And anyways, more and more foreigners are finding out, or Americans, North Americans are finding out, banking, even if you open a bank account successfully in Central America, you can have it closed at any time if you're not here to fill out all the paperwork. And more, not all, I'm saying more and more banks are saying you got to continuously fill out this W-9 twice a year. And they're saying if you do not fill it out, we will close out your account, and that'll be a way to get your money eventually. Now, if you don't speak Spanish, that's a hassle. Even if you do speak Spanish, that's really a hassle. You're banking, you're a resident here. You're here legally. You still have to fill out a W-9 twice a year. You thought you left the United States to get away from the grasp of Uncle Sam, and he's having the banks fill out all these forms to spy on your bank account. Well, I'm just here to say this is probably going to get worse as the U.S. government, as Western governments around the world go bankrupt from lack of tax revenue. And we're seeing with the pandemic the escalation, or the acceleration of the bankruptcy of a lot of Western governments. They're raising taxes, they're raising fees, and they're also increasing their money supplies of all their currencies, so their currencies are crashing against so-called, I'll just say Bitcoin. Incidentally, tonight is a Saturday night, and Bitcoin's at 40,000 a coin. Anyways, my point is, I expect these things to get worse and worse and worse. So, even if you're from Europe or other countries, you're probably going to have this happen to you in the future as your government starts coming after you if you're an expat and you have local accounts. And it's not just Central America. Many governments are doing this around the world. For U.S. citizens, they're closing out your account. They're making you sign all these waivers. They're making you sign all these W-9s. If you have a bank account, a brokerage account, etc., etc., etc. I think this is why Bitcoin is going to become more popular. Not to say governments can't regulate Bitcoin through the banking system, but at least with a Bitcoin wallet, no one really knows what you hold or own in the wallet. That's all. I'm just saying the actual blockchain is not really private, but my point is this happens more and more, this is going to make Bitcoin and things like Bitcoin more popular. But if the governments keep squeezing their citizens and making them fill out more and more forms, it becomes more costly to bank, it becomes more costly to get your fees or your money from your home country. It becomes more costly to do business through your bank account. So that will make, or probably help accelerate the use case of Bitcoin, so it'll be used more. And eventually certain transactions will actually be settled in Bitcoin. You will not need to sell your Bitcoin. You'll settle in Bitcoin for products and services. It hasn't happened yet on a large scale, at least in my opinion. This is me talking. But I do think that's about to come. I'm starting to hear news in the U.S. where stadiums want to sell hot dogs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, drinks in actual Bitcoin. They want to price it in Bitcoin, and more companies are talking about it amongst themselves. That's just my knowledge. Everyone's free to chime in and tell me what they're hearing, especially if it's different. But I'm starting to hear the early rumblings that I'm not saying Bitcoin's money, but it might get to that because more and more businesses in the U.S. are putting their treasures in Bitcoin, and they want to take and accept Bitcoin as opposed to U.S. dollars. Probably the last ones that will do that will be the government. As of now, you still have to pay all your taxes in U.S. dollars if you're in the U.S., but at least some companies are starting to roll out things where they're talking among themselves internally in their companies. Well, how can we set up Bitcoin payments so we get paid in Bitcoin and we pay out people in Bitcoin? We basically settle our transactions not in dollars but in Bitcoin. And if U.S. companies are doing that, I imagine that's happening all over the world. Again, Johnny's opinion. Put it in the comments if you heard differently. Anyways, I just wanted to talk about that, how expatting and banking is getting more and more difficult. So I don't really have any solutions to that except for look at all your options, have multiple ways of getting your cash, and realize governments don't like people leaving the tax farm. They don't like people banking overseas. Even though there's no privacy anymore, they're still making it hard for you to bank overseas. But we'll see what happens. I hope some country will start welcoming Americans and their Bitcoin and or Americans and their dollars without all this reporting requirements, but I don't see that happening right away. Anyways, that's all I got for now. Like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment. Thanks. Have a good night. Have a good weekend wherever you guys are at. Thank you.